Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Is the Karate Kid himself, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hi, Tom.
Karate, kung fu, whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I don't think you can be this loose with terminology when it's the title of your film.
They,
I think it does. I think it does matter.
I think at one point they said that they wanted to make it the Kung Fu Kid, and it was
Yeah.
Weintraub, producer, that
Okay.
said, no, we're not doing that. Because everybody knows it as the Karate Kid, and blah, 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 blah. And then there was some IMDb note of bullshit that said it's in reference to one of the kids in the first fight, like one of the bullies call him the Karate Kid when he sets up to fight. But that must have been really, really off screen because I didn't even hear it.
Yeah, there was plenty of moments in this movie where I wished I was watching a Chinese film called The Kung Fu Kid. I think the project might have actually worked if that's what they made.
Your only criticism is the title?
No, definitely not.
Okay, good.
What I'm saying is that there are moments in the movie where it feels like a foreign language remake of the Karate Kid, and I feel like if they'd have lent more in that direction, it actually could have worked.
Mm-hmm.
There's everything I like about the movie is in moments where that's exactly what it feels like it is.
Yeah, right.
And then you're pulled out of it, and you remember the movie that you're actually watching, which is some weird hybrid between.
You're pulled out of it to watch the movie you're watching, and then you're also pulled out of it to watch the movie you watched in 1984.
Tell me about it.
Just not as good. You know?
I mean, my overall note for this film is it reminds me that you can't make such drastic changes to location and characterization and expect the beats of the story to
stay the same. Yeah, exactly.
If you don't make story adjustments to accommodate those changes, the movie doesn't work.
You're sunk in the water.
Yeah, it fundamentally doesn't work. Everything is going to feel off for the rest of the movie.
You're right.
And that's exactly what happens.
Well, for our $10 Patreon members, we're talking the Karate Kid remake of 1984's Karate Kid from 2010, and it's directed by Harold Zwart.
Yes.
Tom, this guy's going to be in our life again at some point.
Oh. He's a Norwegian gentleman, that's all I know about him.
Well, in addition to directing One Night at McCool's and Agent Cody Banks, he directed The Pink Panther 2.
Oh.
I'm loath to admit that I cannot figure out... No, I'm not loath to admit. I happily, readily admit I cannot think of what qualifies him to direct this movie after having directed those movies.
It also seems
Why would you think of this guy?
And why would you not think of a Chinese filmmaker? Why would you go with the Norwegian film director?
Yeah.
Because this film is crying out for an Asian perspective.
You know what else surprised me?
What? That the film's set in China? That surprised me too.
Well, I mean, everything you're saying is right in the idea, like, what a smart choice it would have been to get a Chinese director. But having said that, this movie has 66% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's pretty high.
That means the devil is involved. Go on.
But listen to this. A budget of $40 million, an opening weekend of $55.6 million, in the USA $176.5 million, and in the world $359.1 million.
Yeah.
I did not remember this movie being that big a hit.
I think it's designed.
I'm shocked.
it's designed that way, isn't it? Like it's calculated to get the largest possible international market.
Well, there's that, and then because it's 2010, I can't help but think, the 2008 Olympics having taken place in China.
In Beijing.
Yeah, right. And
where
this
the movie's
movie,
set.
that was clearly the reason for the inversion of locale.
It's first of all, I just want to say, because if you've not seen this movie, you might be surprised to know. Even if you have, I'm still surprised. This movie's set in China. Did not know that going into the movie.
So I was right. You hadn't seen it.
Of course, I hadn't seen it. Of course, you were right.
All right.
Don't take that and loop it.
Now you've given me the idea.
Yeah, you cut it out and then loop it every time I speak. Every time I speak on the podcast.
Yeah.
Of course, you're right. from here in memoriam. No, so for me, it's threefold. That's the first part of it.
Mm-hmm.
The aftermath of the. That's probably too strong a word to use. Post Olympic Beijing. And
right.
the image it wants to present to the world.
And I would say kind of post-glow of that Olympics from Beijing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we were all enthralled, I think, by... It really did...
Come on. We were all just jealous of how much control the Chinese government had over their citizens.
to
we're
jump
all
out of
driving
boxes.
to work in the moment.
To jump out of boxes and bang on drums.
Right, so we were driving to work in the morning. It's going, some of these idiots could really use some of that Chinese government control.
Yeah, sorry, but go ahead.
But that's the first part of it. I think the second part of it is what's going on historically, where America is now fearing China as a global economic superpower.
Right.
And the third part of that is Hollywood as an industry trying to court the international distribution market of China, which is like one of the biggest in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And you combine all that, and that's how you get this movie. That's how you get that choice to set this movie in Beijing. I mean, we're 2 years away from 2012, where sorry, the movie 2012, obviously 2 years away. I'm not an idiot. We're 2 years away from 2012.
I can fucking count to two. Thank you.
From the movie 2012, where, of course, the Chinese are the heroes of the piece, specifically so this movie could be released in China.
Yeah.
And there's a similar thing going on. Like, half the time I feel like I'm watching a tourist information film from the Chinese government.
Sure.
So... It's kind of, out of context, it seems like a crazy choice. In context, it makes perfect sense.
How about just from a movie remake choice?
It's a disaster.
What, you don't think it feels like a natural choice for an inversion?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Again, well, it could work if they changed the story around it.
Yeah.
But they don't. So it's fucked. It's fucked from the inside. I don't know
yeah,
why,
but what I'm saying...
that's such a graphic image. I apologize.
It's fucked from the inside. You gotta fuck it on the inside.
That sounds like something Terry Gilliam would shout on the set of of the Don Quixote movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Tell us when we're fucked from the inside.
But if they had made those changes,
well, yeah. What I'm essentially saying is, if this was a Chinese movie, if this was a foreign language Chinese remake of the Karate Kid called the Kung Fu Kid,
mm-hmm.
if the character was from a different part of China, if the lead character was from a different part of China and not from Detroit, of course this movie could. And everyone was speaking. Everyone was speaking in Mandarin. Of course this movie would work.
Well,
it's because the material, the ingredients are good, but
mm-hmm.
you can't make these giant changes to the material and not account for it in the story.
Yeah.
That's insane. The main character can't speak the same language as anyone else he meets.
Right.
And nothing is made of it.
And
And it doesn't affect
he
the story one iota.
He also makes no attempt to do so.
Well, exactly. I mean...
I guess that's
you know,
unfair. He makes an attempt with
No,
the
no, he
father
doesn't. He
towards
doesn't.
the end.
he really doesn't. But
He at least makes the attempt to read it off paper.
Yeah, I'm trying. One of the things I'm going to try and catch myself on is being needlessly mean to Jaden Smith. Okay. 'Cause
So, okay.
this movie gives you a lot of opportunity for that,
It does.
and I want to resist that low hanging fruit when I can.
I'm
gonna
so
have to
I'm
at some point get mean.
yeah.
But I don't want to do it as a matter of course.
I found that to be a challenge while watching this movie because I couldn't figure out if I didn't like things I was actually seeing on screen or if my distaste for the weird wacky comments and quotes that I know he's known for were influencing me to dislike
Well, yeah.
this movie and his performance.
Well,
I want to make
don't know
sure
about-
that I was trying to be as fair as possible.
Yeah,
to
because
Jaden
he's
Smith.
because he's a 12-year-old child,
Right.
who, let's face it, is doing this against his will.
I think you might be right.
I am absolutely. I mean,
The pictures at the end of the movie might support that.
he's a prisoner of his parents' power,
Yeah.
right? And and just
Nothing in this movie made me more uncomfortable than the first time I saw pictures of Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith
yeah.
at the end credits of this fucking movie.
Well, I've got plenty. As you might imagine, I've got plenty to say about that in my credit chat.
All right. Well, then let's get
but
to it.
But to start at the beginning of the movie and not
Yeah.
not to kind of cut off anything else you have to say.
No, go ahead.
Business-wise. But the first time, I don't think I've ever seen Jaden Smith in a movie, but the first time I saw, so this is it's not only the first time I've seen this film.
You hadn't
the
seen
first time I've
Pursuit of Happiness?
No, haven't seen Jaden Smith act before.
Mm.
And the first thing I thought when he's introduced, I thought, I'm surprised he's not more kid actory than he is,
Mhm.
given his upbringing. And then I rethought that, and it made sense. Because the kid actoriness that I'm thinking of comes from exposure to showbiz. From going to classes, to going to pageants, for doing auditions. Jaden has been spared all of that because
Right.
his parents can literally have the money and power to go, okay,
Put him
you're starring in a movie this summer.
Yeah.
So it actually makes sense that he's this blank canvas. He has this lifeless face throughout the entire movie. And it left, as the movie went on, I was like, I could do with a bit more of the kid actoriness.
Yeah,
because
right.
he's really boring to watch.
But I also think that at times he thinks he's giving like Curly from the Three Stooges level comedic beats in this movie. I think that's what he thinks he's doing. And he's not.
Going back to a previous episode, it's more like Curly when they turn the sound effects off.
Right.
And it's just a homicidal maniac. Well, but every time he's on, like every time I have these thoughts, exactly the thoughts that we've both been expressing, I feel bad about it. I feel guilty because he's 12. He's 12 years old.
Yeah, right.
You know that his parents have to some extent pushed him into this.
Can I ask you a question right off the
Yeah.
bat?
Mm.
He's playing a kid, Dre Parker, who's from
Karate
Detroit. Obviously, the family is in trouble. Mom at one point says, "This is our last hope, moving to China and me taking this job." So I don't think they're they're not coming from a...
Just think about what you just said. Just think about what you said in terms of plausibility.
Right.
How can you lose your job and be invited to take a job in China by the people who fired you? Am I being totally naive here? But this is not how I thought outsourcing worked. Because if it did work like this, Americans wouldn't fear outsourcing. They'd just be, oh, I guess I live in a different place, working the same job.
Right.
That's not. But the jobs go to China. You don't go with the job. But this movie
Is that what it
presumes that
was?
you do.
Strictly that? I thought it was more like she had to find another job and China was the only place she could get it.
But okay,
It's
either
still
way,
crazy.
that
You're
doesn't
still
make sense
crazy.
either.
It's still crazy. You're right.
What, you just sort of like, I'm gonna go want ads. Let's look at the Beijing
Wait,
section,
okay.
shall we?
We're off point already. I wanna
We are.
ask you
But
something.
this is crucial. This is a baffling narrative choice.
It is. It's literally just for the inversion. So
And
they're
for the
gonna-
propaganda.
They're going to ignore. Yeah, you're right. They want to ignore everything that makes sense narratively just to have the inversion and basically to sell the movie to China. Now, having said all that, though, you know, the narrative, the family, they're clearly they're not people of means. And yet,
Right.
and I hate saying this because, like you said, that we're talking about a 12-year-old kid, and his circumstances are his circumstances. But I could never,
this is
for a
what you're about
second-
to say. What you're about to say is fair comment.
Okay, so
This is economics.
Yeah.
Right.
yes, I could never shake the feeling that I was
No.
watching a kid of the most immense privilege that you could, like, it's just sort of written all over his face. And it's so hard to watch, Tom.
It's true.
It's so
really
fucking hard to watch.
I have a theory that later on in the training montage when he's getting tennis balls thrown at him,
Yeah.
I bet they had to change whatever it was to tennis balls just so Jaden knew it had a sport that he understood as a rich person. I bet it didn't start off as tennis balls.
I'm not sure I totally agree with that, but it makes sense still. All right.
Yeah, it's yeah. Everything you're saying is true, and it leaves a nasty taste in your mouth.
It does.
It makes it very hard to invest emotionally in his performance because of stuff which is largely off
what's-
screen.
You know what's the other funny part is that
Well, please tell me. I have no idea.
the character of, I think his name is Cheng, the Zenwei,
Yeah,
the bully,
Yeah, Johnny Lawrence.
the Johnny Lawrence of this movie.
Johnny Lawrence.
I could also never shake the feeling, despite the fact that I think he's making an honest effort towards
Yeah.
that character. I could never shake the feeling that I was watching the face of a very sweet boy.
Mm.
And then the pictures at the end of the movie confirmed that thought for me as well. When he's sitting there like best friends with Jaden Smith. So,
But this is something that when we're talking about changing characters, changing information about the characters, but not changing the story to accommodate it.
mhm.
Reducing the ages of these characters makes a huge difference.
It makes such
when
a
they're
big
fighting
difference.
each other,
Yeah.
it just looks like it's just child abuse.
Right.
I mean, child on child abuse, sure, but still, I guess when Jackie Chan's beating them up, you're like, shh, I don't want to see this. This is
Right.
unpleasant.
Because they're
So-
all in like the 7th grade. If he's 12 years old.
Jesus Christ! Who thought this was a good idea?
Fucking fuck.
Do you know what it reminded? Do you know what it reminded me of as well? What I kept
Hmm.
flashing in my mind was that episode of Seinfeld where Kramer's in a karate class
Yeah.
with the kids,
I had the same thought.
and I don't think that's what they were going for.
Oh man.
Yeah, this is. I'm glad it's not just me, and I'm glad that your position is that there's a lot of baggage that this movie has that
Yeah.
isn't necessarily to do with the movie itself, but
Right.
you can never unsee.
Right. And it's funny because on the most basic level, it makes the movie hard to watch.
Agreed.
And
Well, you've got a lead actor with no charisma, plus kids getting, kids getting beaten up.
Right.
It's not a recipe for success.
All right. Uh, should we get into the narrative, or do you want to talk a little bit about Jackie Chan? Where's that leave Jackie Chan in all of this?
For me,
Yeah,
I think he's excellent in this movie.
I do too.
I think it's disappointing that the film around him doesn't live up to what he brings to it.
Yeah.
I
Because
think he's
even
got
in moments
some-
that I would never choose to do narratively, with him driving the car that kills his wife and son,
yeah, it's not the same as them dying in an
It's-
internment camp, is
it's
it?
not at all. No,
it's
well,
not.
I don't think they died in. Well, maybe they were in the internment camp.
Yeah, they
but-
were in an internment camp when they died.
But she died giving birth to the child, I think.
Well, that's right. In
Right?
in an internment camp.
But in the internment camp. Okay.
yeah,
Having said that, I would never make that choice. Yet Jackie Chan
Yeah.
is acting the shit out of that one moment.
it's a beautiful scene.
It's
a
so
beautiful
well, acted.
scene. Mhm.
I just wish they gave him something worthy of that performance. It really is like it's such a fucking bummer.
It really is, and I mean, I admire him greatly as a film star. I think his signature style of martial arts. It's kind of a mashup of martial arts, comedy, and dance that he does.
Yeah, right.
It's unique to him. I always love seeing it. I think just in terms of straight drama, he's doing a fantastic job with this character.
I do too.
And I think people might confuse not liking the movie for not liking his version of Mr. Miyagi, and how dare anyone try to
Yeah, right.
replace Pat Morita, but
But it's the one thing in the movie that's working all the time.
I know. It's again. It's like in Last Crusade. There's so much that's not working, and yet the thing that's most vulnerable to not works,
Right.
which is his father.
Yeah.
And you just like, how did they pull that off and screw up everything else? I feel like exactly the same here. It's like this is the one part of the movie I was predisposed to not like. And it's
Mhm.
the one part of it that won me over more than anything else.
Yeah,
And that's
right.
all down to Jackie Chan.
Well,
It's a great performance. He is a great artist. He's absolutely
I'm glad
the
we're
right
on the
choice
same
for this
page
movie.
then.
But they hamstring him
Yeah.
because he's playing someone. He's not even playing someone who's an immigrant. He's got no dislocation from the place he's in.
Right.
So they have to ham up the tragedy aspects of it, which limits what he can do with the character.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Because there's all kinds of nice surprises in the 84. When we first meet Miyagi, he's in the shack that we didn't know what to call. Like he's in.
I believe we came up with the very catchy title of the non-Freddy Krueger boiler room. To correct you, sir. There's our T-shirt.
But then, the lovely surprise in that movie is you see, this house that he built and like the cars that he has. And so, that like the discipline he's had and the money he's saved
Yeah.
and how, wisely he's, spent his money or, all of that is fantastic. And then when you leave the character in his homeland
Yeah,
and there are
right.
no surprises like that. He's just a sad man in a sad
He's
place.
just a sad man. A sad man alone eating noodles.
Yeah.
It's a shame. It's a shame.
Yeah.
This is again, overall note for the movie. I think this has the potential to work as a Chinese remake of The Karate Kid.
Mm-hmm.
When it's him and Chinese Kreese, who I'm going to call Cheese, the scenes between them, I'm like, I buy all of this.
Master
I would
Lee,
love
I think,
to
is
sit-
what you're
I would-
searching for.
Sorry?
Master Lee, I think, is what you're searching for,
Master-
sir.
Or Cheese. I would love to sit down and watch a foreign language remake of The Karate Kid.
Yeah.
Set in Beijing. With Jackie Chan.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the kid playing Daniel doesn't even need to be very good. Better than Jaden Smith, but not particularly good.
That shouldn't be hard.
He just has to be from China.
Yeah.
another part of like rural China or whatever China's equivalent of New Jersey is. That's where he's from. Right? If you're of Chinese descent, write in. Let us know what the Chinese version of New Jersey
Yeah.
is. Oh, anyway.
We talked about coding in the first movie, how easily that movie codes itself.
Mm.
It's funny that it's still Columbia, so we have the logo, not the charming logo that I love, but still the Columbia logo. Followed
A
by
less expensive ornament at your grandparents' house.
exactly.
Yes.
But this movie seems to want to code itself as African American, as black right away.
Yeah.
With its song choice. And yet, nothing else in the movie seems to lean in that direction.
Technically, it is a balance that needs to be redressed from the original Karate Kid, and even then it said, the Hispanic and black community are missing from that film, and
right.
Where they would otherwise be there. But again, you have to make it more straightforward. It's just like like black when black Americans are moving to Beijing, that becomes about the cultural difference between America and China.
Right. Yes.
It not about the intricacies of ethnicity within those countries is lost as soon as you do that. And I think you're absolutely right. I think it just gets lost. It gets lost in the mix, to use a vinyl term, which was the logo.
Right. Yeah. I forgot we had a second logo.
Overbrook.
But I thought, what an interesting choice to try that, because I did see this movie in the theater and then forgot it completely.
Did you forget that it was set in China?
No, I remember that part of it. I got that far.
Because I got to tell you, with a lot of these reboots, it's fairly predictable what's going to happen.
Sure.
Not because they're pretty much remakes anyway.
Right.
But I got to say, the biggest surprise I probably had since we've been covering reboots is that growth development chart where he writes "moved to China."
Right.
I paused it. I kept reading it. I went, it can't be China. It cannot be China. It must be California, but he didn't have the space to write it. And I looked again and again, and all I could see was China, China, China. And then the next scene, it's like, let's get on the plane to go to China.
Right.
And I'm like...
He's leaning over to a guy and trying to speak Chinese to him. And he says, dude, I'm from Detroit.
Yeah, which they think is, the best joke ever made.
Yeah.
And is the most basic joke you could make.
Yeah, exactly right.
That goes for Jaden Smith as well. Like, so many of the scenes he's in count on him being a special kid, and he's the least special kid.
Yeah, exactly.
I could possibly think of. But anyway, to be fair to the movie, when it opens with that growth development chart and the camera tracks upwards, I was like, oh, good, like a visual piece of exposition.
Mm-hmm.
This is a nice way to start the story. And then I see Daddy died.
Right.
And I'm already out, because there's no way you'd put anything that flippant about such a tragic life event that way. Like,
not without at least mom saying, honey, you don't want to be, let's get rid of this one. We'll paint over that.
Right underneath need milk, it's like, it's bullshit. Storytelling bullshit.
Yeah.
And then, my mouth is agape as I find out this movie's going to be about them going to China. And
I'm so
and
surprised
again, I'm trying to think in 2000.
Come in knowing that much about it.
But why would I? Why would I ever think they would do this?
Might have seen a preview of it.
No, I understand that, but if I didn't have any, if I had no preview, no foreknowledge, I could never guess that this is what they would do.
All right,
with the format. And then it made me think of other reboots we've seen, like RoboCop, which was around this time. Also, a section of which is in China.
Yeah.
like America's really afraid of China in this period. I don't feel like we are now, but we must have been in around 2010 to 2015.
Well, I think it's between afraid and wanting to court
exactly,
because we
and
want
that's the
their
tension
money.
that's in
yeah.
this movie. Yeah. We want their money. We also want to keep our own money.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
And therein is a tension, and you know, as they're leaving, so yeah, it's just as they're leaving. First of all, you know, we said with the original Karate Kid that it's very clear from the visuals that this is a modern day frontier story, that they're pioneers on the trail to the west. But they never, you know, as with pretty much everything in Karate Kid, they never say that.
Sure.
They allude to it visually. Of course, here the first thing that comes out of the mother Taraji P. Henson's mouth as a mother is, "It's like we're brave pioneers." So with dialogue like that, who needs subtext? So there's a point of comparison already.
Good on us, son.
The movie knows what it is and wants the audience to know it knows what it is.
Yeah.
And that's a weaker movie already. And as they're going to the airport, there's like factory closed signs.
I made the note that they seem to be going for the same thing that the original did by showing Newark, New Jersey, and that sort of, you know,
but it's a
urban
false
motif.
equivalence.
But exactly, right.
Because Detroit is dying.
Yeah.
It's not going to exist as a city. So in the original, if Daniel and his mother want to come back from California, New Jersey's still going to be there.
It'll be okay. Yeah.
And all they have to do is get from California to New Jersey.
In that station wagon. Not a safe
Right.
bet, but, you know, it'll probably get there.
Yeah, and they know that New Jersey will be there when they get there.
Yeah.
For these pioneers, this is the point of no return. Detroit is gone. If they want to come back, there's no more Detroit, and also they have to find a way of getting back from China. It's not the same. But it's treated as if it's the same. I don't get it. But that factory closed, one of those factory closed signs comes on screen at exactly the point that the China Film Group Corporation title comes up. And at that point I was like, I am in a Chinese propaganda film. What this is telling me is, America, your economic dream is over. We are your new overlords. And I for one welcome our new overlords.
That's amazing.
And then, you know, to add in, just in terms of filmmaking, even taking out the bizarre kind of political choices, we talked about how they managed to show the journey in the original movie without ever going into the car. And of course, they do exactly the opposite here. We have a time-lapse plane scene. Like, the original trick, you don't need the plane scene at all, right? It's like, no one's going, well, I said they were going to the plane, and now they're in China.
And now, yeah, exactly.
How did they get there?
Why? How would I know what happened on that journey unless they showed it to me?
And once we arrive in Beijing, this is where the tourist information film kind of takes over, because they're explicit. They only want to look at parts of Beijing that reinforce the international image they want to project now.
Right, and all that's carefully cultivated by Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith so that they can, you know, sell the movie overseas. I mean, it's
right. They even say
they
even have the joke, "There's nothing old in China." I mean, this is a commercial for China, for Beijing. Yeah, basically the storytelling is given over to marketing at that point.
Yeah, right.
I think is the point I'm making, and
it's just
it just
gives you
they keep trying to explain why they've gone to Beijing, and it never really adds up.
No, you're right. Yeah, it always falls just short of that, because like I'm not sure I understand what she does or where she does it.
No,
and it's never going to come up again in the movie. You know?
In the original, we didn't see either of her workplaces. We knew she worked for Rocket Computers and then an Italian restaurant.
Yeah.
Done.
But we didn't need as much information because we didn't go to fucking China.
Right. And then just to make it even more confusing, the first kid he meets is a white American and blonde.
Yeah.
Which, again, is never contextualized. I'm like, is this where Westerners go in Beijing to live? Because he's the only white, blonde kid, American kid around.
Well, no, but
It's
that's
very
not true because,
confusing.
I mean, it's a little down the way because once he actually gets into school, I noticed that there are at least a half a dozen American
Okay.
kids you see peppered throughout that school. So
All right.
they're it's like they're trying to allude to the fact that this isn't completely crazy, everyone. Just so it's like a reassurance to the audience. The batshit crazy thing we did for this story isn't batshit crazy, so there.
And also the timeline doesn't make sense because they arrive and then she says, "You gotta go to bed. You got school tomorrow." Oh no, she says, "Stay awake,
Yeah.
so you can go to school tomorrow."
Yeah,
Which,
I noticed
First of all,
the same.
doesn't make sense.
I'm like, who
But,
arrives to China the day before you have to start school? What?
Yeah, I don't. And this is where I think there's an element of propaganda here. Like China's like, I think they have control over the store. China. That sounds like such a terrible conspiracy theorist. China have control over the story of our movies.
That's right.
But in this context, in this very small
You
context,
might be right.
in this very small context, I think at some point they said, "Hey, we can't have it that we have to make it look like, even though a Chinese company takes over your workplace and outsources your job, you go with the job.
Yeah.
So you're not actually losing your job, because this can't ever have happened. At least not to someone at like a mid-level employee.
Right, exactly.
Maybe a CEO or corporate brass, but there's no way they're like, well, yeah, but Doris in accounting still gets to keep her job. She just has to move to Beijing. Did this happen? I don't
Just
know.
this small thing of moving to China.
The thing is, like, I've never heard of this happening.
Yeah, me
in
neither.
the real world.
All right, we're started. Why don't we take a fair episode? The 2010 The Karate Kid.
10 for 10.
Directed by one Zwart.
Harold Swart. Harold with 2 A's.
Yeah. You don't see that often.
I don't know. Maybe you do in Norway.
Maybe it's a Norwegian thing.
It begs the question: why did they hire someone Norwegian to
God
make an
damn it.
American film set in China?
I want to talk about him because if there's one thing that really drove me nuts in a 2-hour and 20-minute movie, I might add, I didn't like seeing that come up when I brought that movie
That
up
almost seems designed to piss you off
Exactly.
specifically.
Like, what? You can't get this movie under fucking 2 hours?
I feel like we've been here before, though. Like, I feel like even in the short time we've been doing originals and reboots back to back,
Right.
that
Yeah.
that we've got
It
like,
keeps happening.
a 2-hour original that ends up being a 2-hour 20 reboot.
Yeah. Always.
And you're just like, where are
Why?
they getting those 20? It's the same film. Where are they getting those 20 minutes from?
Can't you get more efficient? But what I want to say speaks directly to that because the one thing, one of my biggest notes directorially for this movie is that it's indulgent.
I think I know. I
and
think I know what you
undisciplined.
might be talking about.
Because every time we have a scene that we recognize from the first movie,
Yeah.
this movie takes it like literally longer. It takes them longer to do it. So
Well, you know what some of that length is, having to translate it to Jaden Smith.
maybe. But
That's an extra step.
narratively,
Narratively.
this fronts it like we have the scene. He's gonna go ask Mr. Han to fix the shower, and just like Mr. Miyagi had to fix the sink, and he's not gonna do it until the next day. So he goes into the park. He sees his white friend. We take way too long, I get that maybe they show him not playing basketball well, but for some
Do you think it
reason
says that?
we have
Do
to
you think it says that in the
indulge.
screenplay?
Yeah, we have to indulge in this ping
It takes
pong
way too long to go across
nonsense.
there.
So we indulge in a ping pong scene, and then he's going to finally meet the girl and talk to the girl, and then the bully's going to appear. Now, mind you, in 1984, Johnny shows up. There's a tussle. Johnny smacks him down to the ground once. Then Machio surprises him with a fifth punch to the face, and then he gets his ass whooped, and he's thrown to the ground again. This movie takes like 5 or 6 times he's getting back up to fight more so that we can see him flipped over his back, so that we can turn the camera to do this. And it just takes for fucking ever. And he does it in every single scene that is a scene that we recognize from the 84 version. It's so frustrating. I really
Along the
don't like it.
along the same lines,
Yeah.
there are at least 2 instances in this movie of seriously pointless jump cutting.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is at the end of the fight where we jump cut from it turns from
Him on the ground.
him on the ground to the apartment door peephole,
Yeah.
which only in Harald Zwart's mind is a match.
Right.
It's like a visual match. It's like, yes, technically the shapes are the same, but that's not a reason to do a jump cut. Yeah, and of course, like for these scenes, first of all, doesn't it sort of, it involves you mentioned the ping pong combat, which he has to lose, of course, because this movie is not gonna, the Chinese government is not gonna stand for seeing China lose at a ping pong game in a movie that they're sponsoring.
It was probably a request to add it in.
I guarantee it was. And then Jaden's body popping.
Yeah, right.
And it's like we're really early on in this movie. It already feels like we're clutching at straws in terms of what this actor is capable of doing. It feels like we got halfway through the scene and the director's like, why don't you do some of that body popping I've seen you do?
Yeah.
The other day in the tent with your dad and there was potential in this scene. Like I can see the potential
I think it might
in
have.
this scene.
Sorry, but it also might have been. So your dad says he'd like to see some of your great body popping in the movie. So that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Because your dad wants to see you do it.
Oh, I don't know. It even pains me just to think about that relationship. I'm sorry. I know I don't know them, and I don't.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
I don't know anything about them except that on screen, everything that we suspect about their relationship comes to fruition.
Exactly. All right, go ahead.
I was gonna. So I kind of liked some of. There was actually, to your earlier point, I think they're still doing some kind of race commentary here because they fake you out to think that he's going to be great at basketball, and he sucks at it.
Oh.
And that's because there's a moment where you're like, oh, he's a black kid, he's going to be great at basketball, and he sucks at it.
I don't remember thinking that though. I remember,
Well, I know, but because he sucks at everything, both as an actor and a character, it's just another example of, it's just another reason not to invest in Dre.
Yeah.
But anyway, I liked the intention of that. And then the touching hair moment, which is a very real thing that black people encounter around the world. Where it's like, can I touch your hair? And I like both that, that detail, that kind of race specific detail of that cultural detail is built in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it being Will Smith and Jaden Smith and Jada Pinkett might actually be a good thing.
Yeah, right.
And then, but I also like the tone of it where he's like, hey, she's a cute girl, I'm just going to let her do it. Like,
yeah,
12-year-old kid.
Exactly.
12-year-old kid doesn't care that he's being racially profiled.
Right.
Is a cute girl.
Not when it's by the girl he likes.
Yeah, exactly. So I like both.
I remember I have the same note, and I remember thinking the same thing as I was watching it.
But again, the bullying aspect of this scene is one of the biggest problems that they haven't accounted for in changing the material, because it's different when you're getting bullied in a foreign country by someone speaking a different language.
Yeah.
It changes the nature of the bullying, and yet the scene, as you say, proceeds along exactly the same lines
On the
as the one
same
in
lines
84.
as the one in 84, right?
And that you have to, it can't just be cosmetic differences. These impact story and characterization and character development.
The only time I thought they got that right was the next day when he's at school, and Chang he knocks his school lunch down, and when the headmistress kind of comes over and he can explain what happened in his own language, but Dre
Right.
can't. That sense of isolation I thought came over pretty well.
Yeah.
That was a better scene because
Yeah.
we
I see what you mean.
You know what I mean? Like we could hook into that a little bit more as the audience, or at least I did.
But when it becomes when it's an inconvenience, when it doesn't help their storytelling,
Yeah.
they just have to ignore the fact that he doesn't speak the same language
Mhm.
as anyone else. Like, it never plays into the story except in that moment you just described. And it only plays in because it helps them, not because it doesn't hinder them. Whenever
Right.
it hinders them, they just ignore it completely.
Yeah.
Another interesting difference, which I think matters more than they think, Mayeng is not Cheng's ex-girlfriend.
Right.
Their connections are only that they come from the same kind of family. The same
I
class
guess
level.
I couldn't even like
Well, maybe not even that.
at that first bullying moment, it almost seemed like, because he said he's telling her that she should be practicing her violin,
Right, exactly. So he's
almost
just
like
trying
he's
to get
her
her
brother or something like that. Like, it's weird in the moment.
It plays like he's her brother, but he's not.
Right.
So what it must be by default, the movie's not helping me out here, but by default it must be he wants her to uphold the values of, you know, of families in his social status.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think that was supposed to show that they are like, they're the hills. They're the Beverly Hills of Beijing. Even though Dre lives at the Beverly Hills.
Well,
of
it
Beijing.
also, yeah, it seemed like he was, but it seemed like he was even drawing a more general line between us, the Chinese, and this
Yeah,
thing, the
that's
American.
what it should have been. I'm not sure it is.
I got a little sense of that, but
Okay.
again,
okay, good.
it's
I want to
it's
give this
odd
movie a
and
pass where I
weird and
can.
out of place because it's hard to figure out. So you're kind of reading into it as much as you can because you have no choice but to try to do that. You know?
Yeah. I wondered whether there was an attempt to foster a cultural connection between America and China by focusing in on the guard of the school.
Mm.
Like, they were trying to say, hey, China and America not so different.
Yeah,
we have to have
we-
armed guards at
We
our
gotta have
schools
armed
too.
guards at our
For
places
very
too.
different reasons.
Right.
But we have to have them. Then we get into the scene where, which again is straight from the 84 movie, where Han comes to repair the
Yeah.
shower in this version.
Shower
Right?
in this
It's
version.
the shower. Yeah.
The shower that doesn't
Uh,
need repairing. It's just a cultural misunderstanding.
And he's the
Just hit the button.
and Dre is practicing karate through, he's like using a YouTube video or something. He's
Mhm.
using, you know, and in the original it was like
He's-
a magazine or manual or something.
Yeah.
So it's the same scene. I just think it plays differently again because of the casting.
Yeah.
Like, Jackie Chan is a martial arts superstar. Pat Morita was not.
Right.
He was a comedian playing
Yeah.
a karate master. So I did just everything plays and feels differently. The reactions will be different.
Mhm.
How we feel as an audience in reacting to Jackie Chan pretending he doesn't know karate or doesn't know kung fu
Mm-hmm.
to this kid is just, it's different. And again, the way that the scene plays out makes no account for that. Plus, I'm not taking an environmental lecture from China. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Just
you're right.
I'll be lectured
Yeah.
on you know, Western environmental lapses, you know, by virtually anyone, not China.
But not China.
Right.
Thank you. But
Carry on,
I think
sorry.
I mentioned in the last episode, I was talking about you walk into the Karate Kid. If you watch the preview, it's like that he's going to learn karate and it's going to be from Mr. Miyagi, but at the same time, it's coded different because of Pat Morita, and so you can buy into that suspension of disbelief for as long as that movie makes you.
Exactly.
And in this movie, you can't do that. It's impossible because
you're
Jackie
just
Chan.
waiting for the moment where Jackie Chan freaks out on someone.
Exactly.
And because you know the original movie, you know exactly when it's coming.
Right. Except in this movie, even that is fumbled because we just watched a terrible parkour demonstration from 12-year-olds over half the fucking city, and somehow Jackie Chan just shows up. Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, but
I know.
The parkour of it all is all 2010, but
isn't that crazy? Isn't that just crazy? These time capsules.
I know, it's so nuts. But Daniel in the original, when he's running away, he's running to his home. He's like 20 yards from his front door. And Mr. Miyagi lives on that side of the building. There's no reason for, Mr. Han's Jackie Chan to be where he is.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Everything changes when you change it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Don't you understand 2010 Karate Kid? Everything changes when you change it. You idiots.
Yeah, and again, Mei Ying is a violin virtuoso.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, maybe this is an attempt to do some kind of cultural adjustment between the American and the Chinese youth.
Right.
Because it's sort of it seems like Mei Ying has to be, she has to do something to earn her parents' respect, where Ali just has to be.
Yeah.
She just has to be basic white chick.
Yeah, right.
And her parents are perfectly happy. They expect no more.
No, yeah, exactly.
No more
You're perfect just as you are.
But again, it changes the character. It means that
Yeah.
she can't be the same character as Ali, and she essentially is.
Mm-hmm. And I want to say something about there's a scene that's the equivalent, because when I guess it's before the parkour, right?
I don't know.
The equivalent scene when he's telling her that he doesn't want to be here and he wants to go home and all of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Daniel has that scene out of frustration, out of just having been beaten up after, and the same thing is happening to Dre Parker, but the tone of the scene is completely different. And I can't help but think about,
because the timing's off,
Will Smith's influence on all of this, because to me, it's one of my favorite scenes in Karate Kid when he says, "Oh, it's really fair that you asked me to come here," and her mom cops to that, and they have this moment, and then you have, all the beats are the same, but in this one, it's like his Oscar moment, and to me, it feels like a dad came up to the director because he's producing the film and said, Jaden can cry on cue, so let's show his great acting ability.
But that's all he can do.
That's it. Yeah.
He can't act around it.
He can produce a tear, but he can't make me feel emotion.
Exactly.
And so the whole thing falls flat.
The whole thing falls flat, and it's also, and again, I'm not sure how much this is how our attitude to children has historically changed, or how much it's this movie just kind of not getting the tone and the timing right, but. Well, no, it is a big story difference, because in the original movie, Daniel arrives, he gets invited to the party, he tells his mother about the party, she says, go off to it, and the first thing he says is, I was going to help you unpack, and she says, it's fine, go.
Yeah.
Dre won't even put his coat on a hook.
Yeah, exactly.
So the bar is lowered here as to what we expect of children.
Right.
And so all of it plays differently. It's like, fuck this kid who won't even pick up
his own shit.
But with Daniel, you're like, I feel sorry for him, because he's a guy who would rather not meet a new friend just so he can help out, doesn't have to unpack the house.
Yeah.
I mean, this kid literally won't put his jacket on a hook.
And
the
when
sad part
asked
of
to
it is
do
that-
so, he's always saying, "In a minute, after this, hold on, fuck you, not right now." And so
the sad part of it is, I think the sad part of it is, it's probably more accurate as to what children are like in 2010
it might be.
and what parenting
I hope
is.
not.
But I also think it's, you know, it's the first real glimpse you get of Jaden Smith. You're like,
Exactly.
This probably came out of an improv
And
that he did.
Exactly.
Based on something he does at home all the time. I bet you go to the Smith household, there's jackets all over that
Fucking everywhere.
floor. You can't even get in the door. Just a pile of jackets.
But you see
like,
what I
fly
mean
on
from
your
what I
face.
was saying earlier? Because this movie,
Yes.
it all has to do
I
with
do.
his privilege, you know? He's being a little piece of shit.
But that makes this the worst possible choice
Right.
of a device. Because it makes you think of his privilege.
Yeah.
And they should have picked something that is... But I think it is a normal kid thing. But when you apply it to Jaden Smith, then you're thinking, this is like a, you know, this is a kid who, like, you know, doesn't even wash his clothes. He just throws them in the garbage. Or that's
Yeah,
that kind
right.
of... I don't know why I went straight to that, but... Anyway, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Another Seinfeld guest star, Ming's music teacher, is Ponytail from Seinfeld.
All right. Yeah.
Gets the guy who gets his ponytail cut off by Elaine. So I don't know if that was deliberate to have two Seinfeld guest stars in both the original and the reboot, but that's what happened. And I guess that speaks to what you're saying about this school is somewhat westernized.
Yeah, right.
If he's the music teacher. I tell you when I really believe Jaden Smith's acting.
Hmm.
When he was pretending to be asleep. Because his face is so lifeless when he acts that this is the perfect vehicle for his technique.
Oh, that's great. Well, and then so we have the parkour scene. And
Yeah.
this is another indulgent
Which is-
moment from the director because that fight goes on forever. And, you know, mostly it's just to give Jackie Chan a chance to show what he can do.
Yeah,
But that's for the actor, not for the character.
yeah.
And so it's a story mistake to do that. I mentioned it in
Also,
the other
there's
episode, that whole fight's done in 15 seconds.
Yeah. And, you
And
know,
he's
it's
battling smaller children.
I know, it's just child abuse.
God.
But aside from that, like, it's also a
I
shame
did
because...
the one, sorry to interrupt, but
No, that's fine.
the one allowance I'll allow for the film is there's a moment where he looks like because a lot of it is like shoving and trying to get the kids like out of his own way.
Well, he's Jackie Chan. He doesn't want you like he could snap their necks.
He
like,
could,
like a
but he
twig.
doesn't. And there
Right?
is a moment
So-
where you see
he's trying not to.
you see the moment where the character knows that he could hit him with a closed fist and makes the choice not to because they're young. So I'll give the movie at least that much credit.
I'll also give the movie credit for casting Jackie Chan because
Right,
he's
yeah.
doing what he does. He's doing what he does best, right?
Mhm.
It's but it's not shot in a way that's in any way conducive to his action.
Mhm.
This is a Jackie Chan film directed by someone who has never seen a Jackie Chan film. I guarantee it. He does not understand how it works.
Right.
You can't.
Definitely
the-
doesn't
the-
understand how to put fights on film.
No.
Oh.
But before this, something that I just thought is another key difference is when we see their version of Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
Him and his
Yes.
mother go to the Kung Fu Academy, and like it's a different commentary, right? There's no commentary. So in the original, we talked about it. It's Reagan's karate, right?
Yeah.
It's the Reagan version of karate. It doesn't have that connotation here.
It
because
doesn't. And I couldn't figure out.
in the Beijing Olympics, we saw military formations like this
Yeah.
as a point of national pride.
Yeah.
So it's not being satirized; it's being glorified
Right.
because the Chinese are not going to let it look they're not going to allow political protest.
Right. No, yeah. And that's the thing.
Historically, they haven't.
That's
And
the
they're not gonna
weird
do it
thing
here.
about this movie is that I imagine I imagine a Chinese approach to kung fu being embedded in the principles that Jackie Chan represents. So it's, I guess it shouldn't be, but it's hard especially because it's a totalitarian regime. But it was hard. It's hard. It's a little bit hard for me to imagine a school on that size embedded in the culture of, no mercy,
Right.
which is against the principles of kung fu.
Well, one
but
kind of
there's assholes
yeah.
everywhere, so I guess one asshole could pervert it. But unlike the other story, we never get a sense of why this guy's doing this.
I think we do. We get a glimpse of it, and it's mostly the actor who I think is really good.
Yeah, good performance.
Cheese is very good.
Yeah.
I think what they do is they play up the vanity, right? The idea that he's the poster boy of kung fu.
I think you get that at the end, at the match.
And that's there in the original, of course.
Sure.
With the cardboard cutout. But you're not getting the also in the modern day China of the moment, militarization isn't a bad thing.
Right.
This is seen as a negative. It's like it's part of the culture, right? So it's like military strength. So they're not gonna be doing commentary on the militarization of martial arts because there's no contradiction there in the way that there is when we see it with Kreese in the original. So it all changes.
Yeah.
And yet nothing changes. Anyway.
And then on top of that, right around now is a note that I wrote. It was just a general note. This movie, for the most part, seems to be devoid of that melodrama we were talking about. So it's going for just the strictly natural reactions and story points.
Yeah.
And when your source material is something else, and we talked about it's a difficult line to tread, but they did it in 1984, and it just, so it feels like there's something missing from this movie, I think, because that's missing.
And it feels
but
like
also
a lot
part
of
that's the language barrier and everything fucking thing else because we moved to China.
Yeah, I mean,
so
pretty much
many,
everything wrong with this movie
so
can be
many
traced back
fucking
to
problems. Yeah,
move it to China. But it's also that it's exactly what you're saying, and also the balance is out of whack because so many of the elements here are not copacetic in the way they are in the original movie. So, for instance, something that there's like again that desire to be culturally specific about the kung fu or karate that you're showing. So to be culturally specific, and that they show after the fight, they show Jackie Chan giving Dre a fire massage and cupping him.
Yeah.
But he's a 12-year-old kid
right.
who has not consented to have himself burnt like this. And so it's a horrible scene to watch for that very reason. Yet none of this is in your mind when it's wax on, wax off, or anything like that. I mean, that makes it look that kind of exploitative child labor look relatively harmless, compared to torturing him as what happens in this scene. And they just haven't thought it through. Like, it's not a good look to be doing this to a 12-year-old kid. I wouldn't even recommend being done to Daniel in the original, but it wouldn't have been as weird and as off-putting. Yeah, and I mean, I guess we've skirted around saying this, but whole scenes of dialogue reenacted.
Yeah, right.
Like, it's not just the scenes that are the same, it's the dialogue.
The dialogue, yeah, you're right.
And that's where it really hits home that you need to change everything if you're gonna make this leap.
If you're gonna make this wholesale big ass change, like, you can't pull dialogue directly.
And also, in the scene where they go back to Cobra Kai in the original, Daniel knows what the grown-ups are saying. Here he doesn't.
Right.
That's a different scene. It's a totally different scene.
Right. Yes.
You know, it goes back to the Psycho problem of like, is this a shot-for-shot remake? Is this a reinterpretation?
Because it's
You know,
neither.
what...
You know, like
yeah.
the choices you made means it's neither.
But like like the Psycho remake, you've restricted yourself to a way of doing the movie that is counterproductive to making the movie you want to make.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing is kind of true here. I mean, another thing I'll say in not defense of the movie, but you know, something that
You got a positive though.
A positive change adjustment that I thought worked really well was that having the mother more involved, Taraji P. Henson kind of like more a part of the story. I thought that was an appropriate change to make, and there was one or two scenes where it didn't look like a reshoot, so
yeah,
that's great.
I agree with you on that, and yet you have Taraji B. Henson in your movie, and it feels like you're wasting her time, despite the fact that you have her more involved than the last mother from '84.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And it just reflects modern parenting, right? It would be
Yeah.
harder to swallow, especially as they're in a foreign country and she's the only family he has.
Right.
That she would be absent from the events in the
Yeah.
way that the way that Daniel's mother is.
And yet there's, you know, she's present more, but visually she's not doing more.
Yeah, and
Really.
sometimes clearly they reshot it because they probably forgot that she hadn't been in a scene for a while.
Exactly.
And
we
I'm
have
not
like one of
surprised-
those new scenes is right about now because they go to that festival, the three of them,
Of course they do.
right?
So, of course they're going to like a cultural festival.
They're going to a
What else do you
cultural
do?
festival.
What else do you do in a propaganda film?
In a
Show off.
They're gonna go to this cultural festival, but of course it's gonna end with two 12-year-olds kissing,
Yeah.
and I feel as uncomfortable as Taraji P. Henson and Jackie Chan do.
Oh, definitely. And it's also so interesting thinking about the equivalent of this in the original, which is the golf and stuff date,
Yeah, right.
which is here replaced by a cultural festival. And again, that's a difference that needs to be accounted for. Like, I don't think the original Karate Kid, unless I'm very much mistaken, is saying that golf and stuff is the best of American culture. I mean, I think it is, but I don't think that's what it's doing. But here, you know, because of the background of the film, you know that it's China wants to show off the very best of its culture.
Yeah, right.
And so we've replaced golf and stuff with a cultural festival. But that's a different story. When you know, the Karate Kid is not limited by anything. It can just show you what's in the place that
They live. Yeah, right.
Yeah, this has to be restricted to what is an approved
Mm-hmm.
image of China internationally, and that just changes it to change from golf and stuff to. And it's good later on that they go to like this arcade and then they have the dance machines, because if they didn't have that,
Yeah, right.
you'd be like, well, you know, I'm sure China has places where children can hang out as well,
Right.
and
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
not just cultural festivals.
And I did like that
It
turn for her character where she's walking up onto that the dancing machine and looks so shy, and then just busts some Lady Gaga.
The only problem at the end of that scene, Jaden Smith lets out a noise, which is,
Yeah.
in context, is a 12-year-old's first orgasm. And it's as unpleasant as that description made it sound. It made me feel really old that the way that Dre tries to relate to Mei Ying's like more traditional culture.
Mm-hmm.
She made him a CD. He made her a CD.
I know.
from-
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I used to do shit like that, and I didn't. And at the time, it wasn't like. At the time, it was Nitro. It wasn't retro.
Right.
But he's doing it because it's retro.
Mm-hmm.
And the cultural festival, did it remind you at all of Karate Kid Part 2? Is this the reboot remaking the sequels at the same time kind of syndrome that we've seen before?
I mean, I didn't make a direct connection, no.
Okay. What do we have after? What have you got next?
Um,
Because I've got a lot of the
Well,
same notes that it's this change matters.
Yeah.
Basically, all my notes are this change matters. Why are they in China?
dispersed throughout all of this is him putting his coat on the peg, taking it down, putting it on, taking it off. And then right after that festival scene, we have the equivalent scene of the teacher shows the student what he has been learning right at the moment when he decides this is bullshit, I'm going to walk away from this.
And the timing of that feels really off.
Mm.
Because so much is different, and it's happened in a different order, that by the time you get
Right.
to that, it feels like the wrong time for him to make that outburst.
It feels like it went on way too long, for sure. That kid would have quit so much sooner, but
Are you at all surprised that Jacket Off, Jacket On, Jacket Off didn't take off in the same way as Wax Off did?
I am
Wax
not.
On, Wax Off did
I am not
culturally? No.
surprised. Yeah.
I'm really not as well. I'm surprised that they were able to find a more limited range of movements
Mhm.
than the ones Miyagi taught Tang.
Right.
Like this it's a stretch in the original that all these maneuvers constitute karate,
Hmm.
but these 4 movements teaching you the whole of karate. I'm sorry, I'm out. I'm not buying into that.
But Tom, they have Jackie Chan show exactly where to stop, and he reminds him to be strong with his arms when he does it. So clearly
Yeah.
it works. All right, why don't we take one more break?
Okay.
All right. You have something ready?
No, I'm continually laughing at myself and you because we're more animated about a film we clearly dislike than one we
No,
clearly
that's
love,
true.
which says a
But-
lot about.
But all our notes are the
hatefulness.
same. Your notes are all this matters if you change it. Why did you go to China? And all mine are like, why did the director, The Karate Kid from 2010, as we left, you were laughing because we're so much more animated about a movie
Jesus.
we clearly
I
don't
didn't
like
realize
as
I
much.
I didn't realize I felt so strongly about the problems of this movie. I think.
I
it's
mean, I
because
suspected
think-
we were going to feel closely the same. I remember watching this
Yeah.
movie in the theater and thinking this is not a good movie, but I think, they clearly were going to do a big, huge inversion and then try to follow the general story. And the audience is seeming to lap it up, but I was not. But this, I liked it even less this time around.
Yeah. I think it's partly because I'm very attached to the franchise,
Yeah.
and I feel like there's certain areas that definitely have potential, and so I get angry with the movie because sometimes I feel like it's with a different approach, it could be a movie that I would actually want to watch, but it
Right.
markedly isn't, and that's very frustrating.
Yeah. Well, now we're gonna do one of our another couple, I think, of huge propaganda moments because we're gonna go to the temple and go to the Great Wall, right?
Yeah, so and this is underlined by the train journey that they take.
Right. Yeah.
So they go a long way on the train, see 1 or 2 things, and then come right back.
Sure.
And that's why I think the impetus is propaganda, not storytelling.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
It made me think of the next Karate Kid when they're in the monastery.
Yeah. I thought the same
I
thing.
thought. Although a lot of this made me think of the next Karate Kid. For
Well,
other
and then
reasons.
because the one thing, because that cobra comes up, that CGI cobra.
Oh yeah, you love your CGI snakes, don't you?
And I remember, like, I didn't remember that from the first time I saw it. I just, when I was watching it this time, I remember thinking, does this come back up? Because if it does, it's going to be stupid.
Mm.
And of course it did, and it made me laugh out loud. It was so stupid in the moment. I mean, we'll get
Yeah.
there at the end of the movie, but man, that made me howl with laughter.
And there's little hints here that the movie could go in its own direction and do something different. Like he starts talking about the concept of chi or chai. Is it chi? Chai?
Chi, I thought, but I don't know.
Chi, yeah, it is chi. Chai is a
That's a tea.
drink. As we both know from the recent Spider-Man movie,
There you go.
It's just chai, not chai tea. Because that's like saying TT. So I like that he was, that there was something. He was going through the fundamentals of kung fu and Chinese philosophy. And then they go ahead and make the Star Wars comparison, and it's the same problem as the beginning, where it's like,
Right.
in the original, we understand that this is to some extent based on Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back. But
Sure.
we're not saying anything about it.
Yeah, right.
But here it's like,
It's not-
you're like Yoda,
yeah,
and I'm
it's
I'm
quoted
Luke. I'm like,
directly. Yeah.
shut up, everyone, shut up. And of course, this scene also underlines that, like, unlike Miyagi, Han is close to where he grew up, so he can reconnect with his home anytime he wants.
Yeah, right.
He's not, so that's a different, it's a very different character. From the one that the one
I
that we
also
already saw.
noticed that because we go to the temple and he drinks the water and there's this and there's that and it's we've got some platitudes, we've got being still and doing nothing are two different things, but he's gonna fall asleep.
Jaden doesn't have a problem with staying still
Yeah.
and doing nothing. Doesn't need to be coached on that.
That's his thing.
Yeah.
But on the way back, he's falling asleep on his shoulder and then moves to his lap. And it felt manipulative because my note was, I'm not buying this friendship in this moment. Like the movie has not shown me enough connection between these two.
Or it's very imbalanced, right?
Yeah,
Because
that's what it
because-
is.
one of them is doing the heavy lift, acting heavy lift.
Right.
One of them is just kind of waiting for the next
Yeah.
cut so he can go off and do some body popping
Yeah.
in his
Yes.
in a tent with his dad.
The one person's waiting to say their next line.
Yeah.
And there's just no getting around that, is there?
no.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's again it's frustrating because we it's great that Ralph Macchio is as good as he is playing Daniel.
Mhm.
But when you think about it, you could get away with a less good actor doing that role.
Yeah, I agree.
As long as the chemistry between
Them are good,
the
yeah.
master and the student is good. But they've lowered the bar from that. And that's where we get into trouble.
And there's, we're also at a part where there's a huge contrivance within the story because they go on a date.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, they skip-
all of a sudden
skip
they
school
skip
to go on a
school
date, yeah.
and she skips her practice to go on a date. Right?
Has he just given up school at this point?
I mean, but it's also wrapped up.
He's clearly not learning anything.
It's also wrapped
linguistically.
up in Mr. Han wisdom. So he tells him, you can't work every day. You have
Yeah.
to take a day off. And that's what he tells her. So they go on this date. And of course, she gets a phone call saying, my audition was changed from tomorrow to today. So now you're a bad person, according to my parents, because, I might not make this audition and they have to rush back and do this and do that. What possible reason could there be to change an audition date for an entire school kind of function or whatever it is from
I don't know. As,
the
as,
day
as a
after
parent who,
to this
as a-
day?
as a parent who deals with, sports teams and the like for their child, it's not an uncommon occurrence to just drastically change the schedule out of nowhere.
All right, I'll give it a break then.
But-
Sounds like bullshit.
I don't know how they do things in Beijing, though. And I like the idea that there was a knock-on effect to kind of pay it forward for the wisdom that Han had given
Mhm.
Rey that he could pass Anna Maying and essentially help her pass her audition, because it's the implication is that if she didn't relax right before the performance, she would never have been able to play that.
She
well.
wouldn't have played as well.
Yeah.
But for the character, it's you're a distraction, you're a bad friend, and I can't see you anymore, and she has to break up with him.
Yeah.
Pressure from parents.
Well, at least it was, again, like Ali's parents are total hypocrites. At least they come out and say, it's like, yeah, you got to tell that kid
To fuck off.
to go. I'm like, I like this Chinese model of parenting.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's good. There's no hypocrisy there.
Well, and then we get to the ugly scene. Because Mr. Han is beating up his car.
Oh, where Jackie Chan reboots Drunken Master.
Yeah. I've never really, I mean, we already kind of talked about it, but I've never encountered a scene so much that is like a scene that's clearly not working, but one actor is doing such great work within it.
I think you said a mouthful there.
Fuck,
that is
man.
Exactly what's going on here.
Because even by the time
Also-
they get to the stick things, where he's like
Yeah.
gotta like hold the sticks in one hand so he can wipe his eyes because he's been
Well, it's because
so brutally honest.
You can't get away,
you know
you can't get away from Jaden's lifeless face. That's the problem.
even when he's
Um,
when he puts the sticks, like he kind of hooks the ropes of the sticks onto his fingers, and the
Yeah.
camera sort of pans out to Jaden's lifeless face trying to trying to emote, "You're my friend and come out here with me.
Yeah.
I love you," and he can't do that on his face. Oh, for fuck's sake.
Absolutely. And I think it's going for the easier option to make Han a dangerous drunk.
Mhm.
Because there's no sense of that in the original, and I think that's the right choice. You don't want to lose faith in the character just because you're seeing him at his worst.
Right.
Whereas here, I mean, added to the information that he killed his family, it sort of makes him seem like more of a lost cause than Miyagi.
It does,
was.
yeah. Plus, he's actively smashing a car, so it feels dangerous.
Right, and we don't know at this point what that car represents.
Well, you could guess.
Well, no,
And-
I didn't guess that he killed his family.
No, not that he killed his family, but that it was the car.
Yeah. Well, so the car represents trauma, which is interesting. It's another inversion because in the original, cars are good things. They're like
Yeah,
happy,
right.
classic
That's
happy
true.
days vehicles, right? But in here it's like, oh, car bad car. Let's go on train instead.
Mhm.
So it's just it's like the character still has a car, but in a different context. Yeah, and Jackie Chan plays this scene beautifully.
Yeah, he
It really
does.
spoke to me as the parent of a young child. Like it made me very sad to think of a parent losing their child and having to live with the guilt,
Mhm.
even though he's responsible for the deaths, which is a weird choice. And again, that's a choice that doesn't matter.
Yeah, right.
Like, why put that in there? It's the same level of guilt whether you were there or not, except you're more culpable, so that makes the audience like you less.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any
I
sense.
know.
But the scene itself has some problems.
Sure,
mean-
right, yeah.
Like I know he's only 12, but when he sees the photo of two people in the smashed car,
Mhm.
can he not put two and two together about what happens? He's still like, well, what happened?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
for
he's
God's
got
sake.
to get in the car and declare that he's stupid too.
I know.
But
and what I
you know what
don't-
it is
what I
too,
don't like
Tom,
is
is that
how this
it's an
yeah.
insult to us because the audience
It is
should
an
know
insult
as
to
well,
us.
and yet they're saying that we have to have it explained to us.
Yeah. There's a line like that earlier on in one of the training scenes where Jackie Chan says, "Do you remember what we learned?" And I think, why would you say that to someone who was there when you learnt it? But what I really dislike about this scene is how it becomes the training set piece,
Yeah, right.
because those two things were kept separate in the original movie.
Right.
It's more, and that's a better.
Well,
you
and
know,
in
he
the
just-
original
he
movie,
leaves-
Daniel has a moment by himself He's going out to
Right,
the
and
beach for his crane kick and on top or at the bow of the boat doing his defense with balance.
Daniel allows Miyagi to
The time.
grieve.
Right.
Time and space to grieve. What
This
Jaden's
selfish
doing
piece
here,
of shit kid drags him
It's-
out by
it's
the ropes
unbelievable.
on the end of the sticks
it's
and
saying,
says,
fuck your grieving,
Right.
we've got a tournament.
yeah.
And that's exactly what Daniel didn't do, because at least as written,
Decent
he's a
kid.
far better person. And then this is one of the clearly reshot moments where at the end you have to see the mother eavesdropping in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, something they did on the last day. It's like, Taraji, can you just look through that door?
Thank
Got
you.
it.
Perfect.
That's a wrap, everyone.
One take.
Then they go to the Great Wall of China.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I wasn't expecting them to resist the low-hanging tourist hardware fruits, and they didn't.
And they didn't.
They. I was trying to think of
And it
what
seems
if
for the
original-
characters like a long way to go just to practice. They could,
I thought it
could
was
have done
further
that in the
away
back
than it
courtyard.
was. It is in Beijing, like it's accessible to them, but
Yeah,
it's just
but-
so iconic.
Right.
That's the problem. It's as if, you know, the equivalent in the original would be Daniel and Miyagi training while teetering on the H and the O of the Hollywood sign. Or I guess given that it's set in the valley, they'd be like fighting through a porn set or something like that. I don't know what the equivalent would be, but it's that, you know, it's that.
No, but I think
iconic
it
of
is
the
relevant.
place.
You know, I think it is the same because, yeah, you live in the valley, but you travel to, so you're close. It's by the city, but you see Daniel on top of the Hollywood sign doing his wax on and wax
Yeah.
off, and that's nonsense. Of course, you don't make that choice, but this movie makes that choice.
Well, because in the original, it's California is the landscape, right? It's the
Mhm.
milieu. It's where you are. In this, it's, you know, it's like how many cultural landmarks can we have
Yeah,
in one scene? And it's also it goes against the grain of like the John G. Avildsen Karate Kid style. This feels like Rocky IV.
yeah,
Which, as we know, there's a place for in
Right.
the world. But it's everything Avildsen didn't want
but you
Karate Kid to be.
Yes.
And that's what we're doing
You
now.
got to have Stallone at the helm for that to work.
Right. And I love seeing Jackie Chan finally smile. I think, like, I have no beef with his performance in this movie.
I
think
know,
he's-
yeah.
I think he's exactly the right choice. And I think he does.
I wish he had a better movie to be in.
Yeah, and a clearer character to play,
Mm-hmm.
because he's making the difference between this character not reading and reading. It's not the script is not doing it.
Yeah, you're right. It's
Or
not.
the
He's
direction
doing
or
the heavy lifting for what the script didn't put in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the second pointless jump cut I've got here, where it goes from Dre kicking to the statue of the trophy, of a kid kicking on the trophy, and again it's just the same shape.
Yeah.
And he's decided to match it, so it's poor direction. You know what the worst thing about the tournament scene is for me? I'm sure you have your own examples.
I do.
Why do we have to keep looking up at that fucking screen?
Oh, then we have the same one.
Oh, okay! We have a winner. I think that's where you add 20 minutes to the movie,
I
having to look
constantly
up at the screen.
I constantly kept writing down, why are we looking up at the screen to see what we just saw?
And I don't know whether it's just like Jaden Smith looks gormless or not,
Yeah.
or he's playing it this way. But it genuinely looks like he's involved in the game. He's involved in the match.
Right.
He comes out of the match. He forgets what happens, and he looks up to find out the result.
It also gave me major Star Trek vibes because we're seeing it from the exact view of what we just saw.
Yeah,
The camera angles. It's not. You're not doing the Rocky Balboa thing where you're seeing the HBO
yeah,
effect.
that's right. Yeah,
You know,
you've got that.
you're seeing the
that
shot that the director made.
that incredibly sophisticated Klingon security footage.
Exactly.
So, and yeah, it's. I mean, they keep the inherent arc of the sports movie. It's still a rags to riches story.
Mhm.
You know, the narrative plausibility. You'd think if they were going to make any change, they'd find a way for there to be more of a build up to for Dre to get to this point.
Yeah.
But they do exactly the same.
They do
thing
exactly
over
the
again.
same thing. They keep the same beats. You know, I realized
Mhm.
that they get the one Nong. Well, there's lots of Cobra Kai's, or I forget what they're called in this movie, but were they dragon
Uh,
something?
Yeah. Anything I say now will be racist,
will
so
be.
I'm not gonna say.
I set that up for you, didn't I?
You did, yeah. I'm just gonna call them the Cobra Kai surrogates
Okay, fine.
for the sake of our lawyers.
I think you almost said the Black Dragons.
I
It would have been
almost
terrible
said
on two fronts.
basically whatever it would have been the name of a Chinese restaurant close to me, and hence racist. They are the new Mandarin cuisines.
They keep the same beats, even with like the lesser tier kid on that team who says I can beat this guy, and he's like, no, take him
know.
out. And you
It's like you don't
realize
know these
you
people.
don't even know who that kid is. We haven't had a single moment with him in the entire fucking movie.
And you know what? I don't think Cobra Kai in the original movie get much more screen time than these kids.
Exactly.
I don't think it's about screen
No,
time.
it's
about
about
what you do
what
with
you
it.
do with it. It's the value that you put into it. Yeah.
There's so much more. By the time we get to this point, those characters are so much more fleshed out. And the movie is not working overtime for that to happen.
For it to happen, exactly.
So I don't know why they feel so anonymous here.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard them say the same lines and
Yeah.
reenact the
But
same
it just
moments.
it was a huge reminder to me about how poorly the characters are drawn in this film. And then
Yeah.
we get to the point where I almost said Daniel, the point where Dre gets hurt. It didn't feel like this in 84, but in this movie aside from his other Oscar moment, this feels like the most important scene for the character, where we have to have his best acting, and it's the moment with his worst acting, when he's saying, do the fire thing and get me back out there, and I won't have balance this way or that way. They're pulling exact dialogue for completely different situations.
Oscar moment also means something very different in the Smith family. And in that sense, Jaden lived up to the family name.
Well
And
played, sir.
It's also, the scene is also guilty of that kind of overly kinetic camera work that bad
I
directors
really
think they
didn't
need to
like
put.
it. I thought
The
that was
bad
going to be
directors-
my biggest complaint, but the scoreboard
screens.
beat me
Fucking
out.
Screens. It's baffling why we keep going back to those
So
screens.
strange. But just generally,
again, yeah.
he doesn't know how to direct these fight scenes. He just doesn't. He's not equipped to do it.
But it's also a kind of false confidence that the
Mhm.
more shaky you make the camera work, the more visceral it's going to seem.
Right.
And what Karate Kid, the original,
Yeah, 84
proves
directly proves that that's not
Yeah.
true. Do the total opposite. You can have,
Yeah, keep the camera still, let the action go,
yeah.
and you'll see, and choreograph what's in frame. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Or let that great Karate Kid, the actual good Karate Kid, choreograph the.
Yeah,
Brought
right.
him back.
Well, but
And
he had a surrogate. He had a surrogate in this movie, the Mohawk, the faux hawk guy.
Okay.
I kept thinking, I think he's the best Karate Kid in this movie.
I gotta say, some of these kids, some of the not Cobra Kai kids are fucking great.
Yeah.
Martial artists. I was impressed. Like, they looked way more, that kind of. again, it's like a discipline shaped by totalitarianism, which is different from what we're capable of doing.
Well,
here
and
in America.
I brought it up a little while ago when we were talking about the monastery and the cobra movements, but fuck,
Yeah.
man, when he started, when his crane moment was that,
Yeah.
and the other kid started to mirror him for no reason whatsoever, I might add, I laughed out loud. I thought it was so ridiculous, and
It's funny how
I didn't think that
how, like,
ridiculous moment could be topped, and then they topped it with the final kick. But
sure. Well, even before that, like they're amping up the implausibilities because in the original Daniel had 15 minutes to return.
I
for
know
the game.
too.
Here he has 2 minutes.
That
And-
also brought out laughter.
And what's even funnier is they say 2 minutes. He has to return within 2 minutes. Then they go into the changing room and have a conversation that lasts at least 2 minutes. They're
Right.
still talking after 2 minutes has passed.
Yes.
So in their attempt to amp up the stakes really backfired because
All they got was the
as
timing
far as
wrong.
anybody can tell, Dre is out of the competition.
Yeah,
at this
exactly.
point. So it's all completely but that's such an obvious change that is so obviously wrong.
Yeah.
It's the easy option.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, 15 minutes is too long. Let's make it close, tighter than that. So it's 2 minutes.
Well,
And
really
not
build the
thinking- not
tension
thinking of-
then
Yeah, it'll really build the tension. Not thinking of the ramifications is you can't do anything.
in
Can't
2
do
minutes.
a scene in 2 minutes.
You can't have the impassioned speech followed by the fix
Mhm.
in that amount of time.
And all these kung fu zooms that they do, like, so patronizing and
Mm-hmm.
and just played out. Like it's already been parodied in Kill Bill Part 2 5 years ago.
Right.
You can't be doing it with a straight face anymore.
Agreed.
More Rocky 4 with the Beijing crowd cheering for an American
Yeah.
competitor.
Right. When he gets up.
Absolutely would not happen. Yeah. And
And then
ends on this...
he commits this act of kicking violence that defies, physics as we know it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so
Maybe that's why he
terrible.
looked up. Maybe that's why he had to look up the screen because he didn't believe he defied physics.
Right. I
It ends
challenge
on the
anybody to do a flip standing on their left leg. And you can only
It
push
also
off on
is-
your left leg.
It also isn't as enjoyable to watch because you don't have
Yeah.
the safety cushion with Ralph Macchio that you have with Jaden Smith. Every time he goes out onto the mat, it looks like he's going to get his head kicked in.
Right.
And you're fearful for him the entire time. You can't relax in the scene.
Right.
And you never really felt that with Ralph Macchio. You'd be like, he's going to be okay. He might not win, but he's going to be okay. He's a 22-year-old fighting other 15-year-olds. He's going to be fine. But here it's like, that American kid's going to get his head kicked in.
Right.
And yeah, and then we end on the same triumphant moment. So I wonder
Except
if
we
if
don't. Like it doesn't read as triumphant at all.
No.
And nothing that happens from the moment he wins to the freeze frame
Mm.
builds towards that. You know what I mean?
No.
You have
You're
all
right.
the same
I do.
beats. This
Mhm.
idea, like instead of having Mr. Miyagi's triumphant, proud face as the last thing we see, to have a fist bump, explosion kind of thing happen.
That sounds like a Will Smith note as well.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels. I don't think so. It feels like a Jaden Smith note.
Oh dear God!
That's what it felt like
you
to
really,
me.
you really think he has the agency to give notes?
I think he could say, "I have an idea," and then somebody would say, "Let's not do it." And he goes, "Well, let's call my dad." Fine, we'll just do it.
Yeah, that depressingly is probably how it goes. I really thought for a second that they were gonna that they were going to course correct from the original movie and that it was gonna end with Cheese and Han fighting in the parking lot.
I thought the same thing. I was like, I don't remember this happening at the end of this movie, but I don't remember a lot of this movie. And I thought this could have the after parking
They
lot
might
scene.
as well have done, right?
They should have, yeah. I mean,
Well, they didn't get a sequel, so I wonder if they would have begun the sequel that way. I guess they would have done.
you know what's funny is,
And then go to where would they go after that? Given that they're in China,
there's one other
Would they
movie
still go
that
to Japan.
there's one other movie that they did together called After Earth. Will Smith and his son,
Yeah, right.
and that's 2013. So it's 3 years after this. But after that, it's like Jaden Smith is not. Clearly, he doesn't want to be an actor. He's doing a singing. He's got albums and shit, I believe.
well, he raps in this movie. Didn't stop him. Doing
One of my
his
last
career.
one of my last notes is this last bad song I suspect is a Jaden.
I had exactly the same thing. I was like, I'm gonna wait until the credit comes up.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you that is Jaden singing on there.
And then once I saw the credit, I wrote with Bieber exclamation point.
The only person in the world who could make him seem less obnoxious.
Right.
Justin Bieber. He played that one beautifully.
That's amazing.
He found an even more spoiled, even more obnoxious kid to take the heat off him.
Oh fuck. Yeah.
So, no, it's a no-brainer that my first credit check is the behind-the-scenes production stills.
Oh god.
There are times when you don't need reminding that your parents are the producers of the film.
Yeah.
The film itself has established that, Jaden.
It's already without ever having seen a single picture, we know it's why we have the picture.
We know that party strings. The credits are half in Cantonese and half in English.
Yeah.
So they want the audience to think of this as a genuine international co-production, even though it's directed by a Norwegian, funded by Americans.
Just looking for
And this is
more approval from China.
Exactly. This is what makes me think that Harald Zwart has never seen a Jackie Chan movie. Where's the blooper reel?
Right.
How
Yeah.
can you have a Jackie Chan movie without a blooper reel?
I think he thought that was a bridge too far, and that's why they put the pictures.
I think he's never seen a Jackie Chan movie, and he doesn't know that it's the only way to end a Jackie Chan movie, because there are a ton of outtakes in which he hurts his hand and you see him go
Yeah.
like that in genuine pain, and it's the best thing that ever happened. To credits.
Oh shit.
Apparently the nepotism of this film knows no bounds, because there's a couple of Zvarts in the playing the in the classical music orchestra that we see
Oh really?
in the movies. It's like
That's
how many
terrible.
fucking how many nepo babies are in this movie? They could rename this the Karate Nepo Baby.
No, they could at least say it was a Nepo Baby production.
Absolutely. I don't think we had that term back then, though, did we?
No.
To play with, sadly. Yeah, so, Jaden's rapping on his own film.
Ugh.
His parents are all over the credits. They didn't even give him a fair chance to look like he earned his spot, right? There's
Right.
a way you can manufacture it to look like he deserves to be there. This is not it.
If one still photo was at least from his audition.
It's basically like there's, as if one of those production skills was him, like, shitting on an extra's head, and the extra just having to take it.
A line of
My
people
fi-
lined up to like tie his shoes and serve him juice and
It's called Getting Jaden.
yeah.
My final credit check note is special thanks to, I kid you not, the management committee of Tiananmen Square.
Oh wow.
Now, this has got to be a euphemism for some sort of secret police organization. The first rule of the management committee of Tiananmen Square is you do not talk about the management committee of Tiananmen Square.
You know who the management committee for Tiananmen Square is? That tank. The tank from the photo. That's who the management committee.
The problem is like if you're saying, oh, Tiananmen Square, it's interesting. You'd want to mention that. Why? Well, because nothing happened there. Nothing ever happened there.
Right. Yes. You heard what I said. Nothing ever happened there.
Oh, that was the
Great.
actually the Monday morning headline of the newspapers in the national newspapers in China after Tiananmen Square was
Nothing happened here.
Nothing happens in Tiananmen Square. No, I'm joking. It wasn't.
Oh, thank God.
They don't have newspapers over there. What are you talking about?
You had me going.
I'm sure something similarly transparent has happened. That's it. That's
Nothing?
the end of the.
All right.
Nothing.
Well,
nothing more.
let's crawl out on the limb. Is this a good movie?
Well, I'm never going to have a career in China after this, but no, it is not a good movie.
Tom, you're not going to have a career anywhere. Not with J.J. Abrams, not with Judi Dench. There's nobody left on the list that can help you anymore.
Insulted. There's a public record. There's a public record of me dissing all these people.
Fuck. Yeah, no, it's a bad movie.
It is a bad movie with some bright spots
that
are few and far between, and most of them to do with Jackie Chan.
Most everything to do with Jackie Chan. What about this better or worse than the next Karate Kid?
Yeah, I think that's the only question worth considering.
Because not even I would put this above Karate Kid 3, and I really did not like that movie. But the next Karate Kid is an interesting philosophical debate.
It is. It really is. I'm trying to weigh it up in my head as to what kind of a bad movie is preferable. I think I might put Next Karate Kid at the very bottom. I think I would put this above.
That's tough.
I think fun. As far as I remember, nothing works about the Next Karate Kid.
You're right about that, but
and this has a few choice moments.
Yeah.
That I think show potential. And Next Karate Kid was a lame duck.
But it's interesting. I mean, I was going to make an argument that says, like, can you respect a movie that clearly wasn't trying to be good a little bit more? But what movie, there's not a lot of movies just overtly trying to suck.
I've heard you say this before, and I hard disagree. I think there are movies that set out just to toe a line.
Including the next Karate Kid?
Yeah, I think they revel in their own mediocrity, absolutely.
Because based on that, I would take the next Karate Kid over this. Because this movie, this movie is trying to garner an Oscar nomination like the first one did, I think. I think it thinks it's that good.
Kind of worthiness about it.
Yeah.
That's true.
Because based on The Pursuit of Happiness, everybody thought that this Jaden Smith kid was fantastic in that movie, and he was a much younger kid in the movie, but they really liked his performance, and there was talk like, maybe this guy should, maybe we should give a nomination to that kid. I don't think that came to pass, but I think that this movie was, maybe in Will Smith's mind, designed for that. And on that level, it offends me even more.
Yeah.
But it's really close. I think in spirit, I agree with you because there's at least one really, really great performance, one good performance in this movie from Jackie Chan that stands above.
I like how you already managed that. You were like, one really great, one really good, a passable performance.
I thought great was maybe a step too far.
No, I think
it is a great performance, but it steps beyond what he's given.
Yeah.
from the script, from the director, certainly from his co-star.
And
In that way, it's all the more impressive.
Yeah. And he also nails what he's supposed to do, even though what he's supposed to do is fundamentally flawed.
Yeah.
So, I think Next Karate Kid is slightly worse.
Yeah.
But this is a bit. This misses the mark. This misses the mark more.
Yeah,
than
that's
Next
what it
Karate
is.
Kid does. But the mark for Karate Kid is a much lower
Mark.
water level.
Yeah. All right.
You know, you could put a baby in that water and it would be fine. It's that lower watermark.
Well, you're gonna have
Not
to.
that I recommend you do that.
But. All right,
Should you need to.
ladies and gentlemen, you'll have to tell us what you think. Is The Karate Kid 2010 a better or worse film than the next Karate Kid? If you're listening to this,
We will entertain no other questions.
if you're listening to this, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Send an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com or write us a message on the Patreon.
Yeah.
We thank you again for your $10. We appreciate you. We love you.
We really do. Thanks for letting us vent.
Yeah.
And thank you for letting us praise.
We did
Which
both.
we've done we did on different episodes.
Right. And if you're paying $10, you know that.
That's right.
All right. Well, we'll be back next month for another couple of movies.
Yeah, not too dissimilar.
Not at all.
We'll say no more, but
Not now. Yeah.
we expect to have a lot of the same conversations.
It should be a good time, I think. All right, for Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. We will be back for yet another Patreon duo. Say goodbye, Tom.
Stop saying your ass. You know you're in trouble when any new dialogue that's introduced in the movie is then immediately shot down by the other character.
Right.
Of course you were right.